was watching this large, about 4 foot in diameter, dull yellow light. He could not see anything three-dimensional. The guy noticed movement at the end of the tunnel, and then he gradually discerned this shape. It looked like a humanoid shape that was crawling towards him through this tunnel of light that was located about 4 feet off the ground in the middle of nowhere. And this creature became clearer and clearer as it got towards the mouth of the tunnel, and it looked like a human, a large humanoid creature that was entirely black, no features in the face. It was just like a black shadow like face, heavily muscled, and the creature was literally elbowing and maneuvering along this tunnel of light. And finally, it reached the mouth of the tunnel, reached out, struggled onto the ground, stood up, and then vanished into the night.
Wow.
Now, in the meanwhile, the guy who had the camera was taking these long exposure infrared film shots. But immediately after this creature stood up from the mouth of the tunnel and vanished into the night, the diameter of the light started to shrink. And within a couple of minutes, it had shrunk almost to nothing, and then it was gone. So immediately it was gone. The first thing these guys thought of was, this thing is coming up the ridge right after us. So, they were listening for maybe 15 minutes. They didn't hear anything. So eventually got the equipment and clambered down the 200-foot cliff all the way down to where the incident had happened. And the first thing that was obvious was a very strong smell of sulfur in the air exactly where it had happened. And the other thing was there was no sense of, no tracks, there was nothing except that strong smell. They immediately activated all of this portable instrumentation. They searched for anything that might have been left there in terms of residues. They checked for radiation. There was absolutely nothing visible. So after about an hour of reconnoitering, they went back to the command center, where there were 2 other of the researchers who had been stationed further down on the ranch who hadn't seen this incident. But this was a classic incident that happened on the Skinwalker Ranch, where once technology that could see into the infrared was utilized, something became very, very clear, because those dull yellow lights were very, very common on the property, and this was really the first time that they had been captured in the infrared. This night vision technology went very, very deep into the infrared, and it was pretty obvious that this activity was not visible to the human eye, because the guy with the camera could only see the dull yellow light, whereas the guy with the infrared technology could see an awful lot more. Now,
I would think then. I'm sorry. I would think then that you'd be using an awful lot of infrared from there on out.
Yes, pretty around that same time, a set of surveillance cameras that could see into the infrared were installed on the property, on telephone poles, and it was 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. They were rolling. They were monitoring pretty well everything. There was a lot of incidents that happened that were just outside the range of those cameras. It was extremely frustrating, because every time we pointed the cameras in one direction or in multiple directions, stuff would happen off camera. So it was almost like a cat-and-mouse game.
I seem to recall there was one incident. I believe they had cameras. Finally, I guess in frustration, you had a couple of cameras pointed at each other, each on poles separated by I don't know how much distance, and something was done. I'm recalling a story that Bob relayed to me in one interview about something that was cut, right?
Yes, that's actually you're right. We had a set of cameras, covering the property, but one of those cameras was focused directly on another set of cameras, and
right.
For whatever reason, this happened in July of '98. Those 3 cameras suddenly lost power, and the whole focus started investigating why. And once we reached the pole and found what had happened, it was pretty obvious that something had, with tremendous force, ripped the wiring out of all of the cameras on that pole. There was duct tape, layers and layers of duct tape that were binding the wiring that went from the ground into the cameras, the video feed and the electric feed. All of that stuff had been ripped off. PVC piping anchoring the wiring to the pole had been forcibly ripped off. So, something was very angry and was very forceful in dismembering those cameras. But we remembered that we had another camera on another pole that was still running that was directly focused on this damage. So obviously we ran back to the command center and played back the videotape. And this happened at about 8:30 at night during the summer, so there was plenty of light left to still see what had dismembered these cameras. We rolled the videotape, and then it went all the way past the 8:30 timestamp where we knew the previous cameras had lost power, and there was absolutely nothing on the videotape. You could see sort of cows in the distance grazing sort of peacefully. You could see the pole, and you could see the cameras, but nothing whatsoever could be seen. Now, obviously, we took the footage back to Las Vegas. We got it digitally enhanced. We got it blown up. We really went the whole route on this, and we got it enhanced to the extent where you could see the tiny lights on the three cameras as they lost power. You could actually see that on the videotape, but
wow.
You could not see anything about what or who had completely destroyed those cameras. I mean, what had happened, it looked like there was a very, very forceful, brute strength operation that had completely destroyed these cameras. And we had caught it on film, but there was nothing on film.
So that's completely impossible.
Well, I mean, we went through all of these gaming exercises about, was there any possibility that somebody in deep camouflage could have crawled along the ground? But I mean, there was sufficient light and there was sufficient granularity on the video, especially when it was blown up, to detect anything close to that telephone pole with the cameras. And we went round the block on this. We replayed it hundreds of times. We analyzed it up the yin-yang, and the bottom line is there was nothing caught on camera. But at the same time, there was this tremendous physical force. It goes back to your scientists from last night talking about vibrational frequencies. These are physical impacts that leave evidence that have nothing to do with vibrational frequencies.
Yeah. Since we have you for only such a short time, Colm, I'm curious. Since I've been told that there's recent activity, what kind of recent activity at the ranch or the area?
Well, I know that there's a lot of witnesses coming out with strange flying objects, balls of light. One of the classic things about that we're seeing multiple times on the property were these orbs of light, and they may be different colors. We saw bright white ones. The Gorman family used to see blue ones. Red ones caused a lot of damage to cattle. Other eyewitnesses have come forward, especially recently around the property, to also claim that there's flying lights in the area. We don't know why this activity is continuing or what has triggered it again, but we know that there's a strong discouragement from going anywhere near that property. It is under surveillance right as we speak, and so trespassing is absolutely out of the question. Trespassers will be prosecuted. Okay.
Colm, you said started up again, so there was kind of a lull period. When did it begin again?
Well, this is just hearsay because it's been 2 years since I've left, but from the feedback that we've got, it started up less than a year ago. And, it's not only on the ranch, as I said, a lot of the eyewitnesses that have come forward as a result of of reading this book have essentially completely supported all of the activity on the property, but have extended the radius not only on the ranch to to the entire area. So this particular area of northeastern Utah has been a hotspot for so long. There are, we went through all of the aeromagnetic surveys of the area. We were trying to track gravitational anomalies. We did an awful lot of footwork to see if there was anything unique about the area. We couldn't come up with anything.
The only rap that I've ever heard on Bob Bigelow and on NIDS is that it keeps things pretty close to their chest, your chest. I guess you're still involved. You're still there. So, and I guess, George, you've probably heard this from others, other researchers, that they get a little frustrated because NIDS does keep things to themselves until they've got everything investigated and the final reports in. So at the beginning, when you heard about this ranch, George, I know you've got kind of an in, but did you get in right away, or was there a bit of work involved?
Yeah, it took a while for me to convince both Colum and Bob Bigelow to let me on the property, especially with the television camera. And I assured them, look, I'm going to work on this thing, but we'll wait until the time is right to go public with something. Because, frankly, I mean, this is an ongoing scientific investigation. And I know it's frustrating for people outside of NIDS that they don't know what's going on. But, I mean, you don't invite the public in to participate in cancer research or something. Yep. This entity, this precognitive sentient entity, which is Colonel John Alexander's name for it, it's an interactive process. And people being on the ranch, it affects what goes on there. So having trespassers and things of that sort is not something that NIDS wanted to do. So, yeah, they kept it quiet. In addition, what the heck do you tell the world? I mean, the problem for scientists like Colum and others is that nothing on this ranch and the more than 100 incidents that NIDS investigated is reproducible. Nothing ever happened the same way twice. This thing, this entity, this intelligence was wily and cagey, almost like stalking big game or something. It never did the same thing twice. And it seemed to be able to read people's thoughts. Well, if you're trying to investigate something like that and nothing is reproducible, and you're trying to be a reputable scientific organization that interests mainstream scientists into investigating paranormal-type activity, you don't want to come forward with something that's half-baked and say, hey, by the way, we had a giant Sasquatch crawl through a tunnel of light, and what do you think about that?
So at this point, it's a good question, George and Colum. What do you tell the world? What was I haven't read Skinwalker yet, but what essentially did you tell the world about what you conclude is happening there?
Well, we essentially cataloged all of the or many of the phenomena that had happened, and then we went through all of the possible explanations. The usual cast of characters. We investigated the idea of fraud. We went through the idea of dimensional realities. We went through extraterrestrial visitation. We went through hallucinations, this kind of thing. But we deliberately did not draw a conclusion, an absolute firm conclusion from the research, because, as George mentioned, this has been an ongoing project. I left NIDS 2 years ago, but I know that the research is continuing at a different level. But the object is not to draw any specific conclusions, because if we do, I think we can go off on a tangent that could just lead nowhere.
Okay. Did you ever feel that there was a time when you were close to communication with some kind of intelligence or making a breakthrough of some kind that would be documentable and, the smoking gun?
Yes, we really felt during the summer of 1997 that beginning with that calf incident, right through the summer, there was a tremendous amount of activity. We were interacting with something. It was obvious. We had constructed a series of watchtowers that had dogs as biosensors on the ranch. We were getting a tremendous amount of visual sightings, and we were interacting with something that was manifesting in many, many different ways, but we definitely had the sense we were interacting. And we even went to the extent of attempting to be proactive in interacting with whatever was there, leaving messages out, leaving leaving boxes full of